My presentation is very simple. It only has actually 3 slides. I will ask some assistance from the colleagues from the support. And basically, I will just kind of glance over 3 different areas here. First, PwC is a firm that actually conducts global annual information system security survey. And we have been doing this for a number of years. So we actually did this. Please, if you don't mind. This is the link to the survey, and what we're going to actually access right now is a couple of questions that will kind of set the tone for the rest of the presentation. Hopefully it will work out. So one of the things that I wanted to show you, and you can actually see, which is pretty important, and I hope you will be able to see it. The way how I wanted to introduce this topic in terms of us is actually what we are trying to achieve with the survey and what we are trying to measure. So what you're looking at here is interactive kind of a graphical representation of the survey results for the financial services in Europe. Unfortunately, we could not collect a representative enough sample for Romanian entity. We are working for the next year for this exactly survey for Romania in particular, and also in Romanian language. So this is aggregated the amount of the information that we have. And I wanted to point out what we are dealing with collectively, both vendors, government agencies, and actually practitioners like myself, and the consulting firms like PwC or Big Four in general. So what you see here is basically the question posed to many of CIOs and IT managers and a number of thousands of people across the globe, asking them a very simple question. What is the number of security incidents detected in your organization in the past 12 months? And I actually draw your attention to 2 answers here. The first one, 0 or none, and the last one, do not know. This is actually what I wanted to kind of pinpoint as a probable cause of problem, because as you will see it, just combining these 2 answers, there's about 1 in every 4 people that really didn't know what's going on in terms of the cybersecurity and information security in their organization. It's, for many of the practitioners, it's highly unlikely that any organization will actually experience 0 security incidents. It's almost virtually impossible. This actually implies that many of these people answering this question are really not aware of what's going on in their own organizations and whether they actually have been exposed to cybersecurity risk or not. And I can tell you from experience, including here in Romania and a little bit outside of the region as well, we had clients that actually pointed certain problems in their IT infrastructure, saying that they might have been exposed. When we came on board and actually checked it out, what really was going on, it turns out that they actually have been exposed probably 3 months ago. And it is not unique for any kind of industry. It happens in the US all the time. And this is the kind of the problem that we are dealing with. We have a lot of practitioners, a lot of companies, a lot of vendors actually addressing this issue all along, and we are kind of getting better and better. But I hope everyone actually understands that we have an unknown enemy out there that actually is very skilled, has a lot of time, and a lot of resources actually available to do a number of different things. There are no rules in cyber warfare. We are the ones that actually obey by the rules. So either it's vendors or practitioners or consulting firms or a government agency. We are the ones that actually kind of follow the rules and try to put the framework around it. On the other side, there are no rules. Everything goes. And I will try to actually kind of pinpoint some of these things. Please, can you go to the next one? The next question was, what was the estimated likely source of the security incidents in your organization? And this is, again, basically financial services in Europe. And as you can see it, I hope you can, but I will pinpoint two areas here. It's a current employees. For financial institutions in Europe, there's a 50% of security incidents actually originating from them. And this is a critical point as well to mention. And then the distant second are actually external hackers with the 28%. And then, again, it's unknown. That's the danger in all of this, right? Because there's about between, let's say, 15% of situations where people do not know what's really happening. One of the things that actually was mentioned by some of the either government people here, or I believe maybe Hugo Neumorny from CIO Council, technology does not commit crime. Technology doesn't necessarily actually participates in any kind of a criminal activity. It's a people. And there's a great, I believe, a saying here on a Dell presentation. It's not about hacking technology, it's about hacking people, and this is exactly what's going on. So this is, I believe, a clear representation of what we are facing with. Can you go further, please? And how was your organization impacted by the security incidents? So there's a lot of different impacts right here. And I will try to share some of the experiential ones from Romania and from the region as well. There's, of course, a high probability that some of the records actually will be stolen, and this is actually happening almost daily basis. There are big cases right now in the States that actually Home Depot credit card information was actually stolen, like 40 million. There are some problems reported by JP Morgan just maybe a few days ago as well. So it's a constant threat out there, and there's always something like that happening. However, one of the things that also does happen a lot as well, and it's not necessarily gets publicized as well, it's actually a loss of intellectual property. For many businesses, because we deal mostly with businesses, myself mostly, what we are dealing with is actually a loss of customer information, pricing lists. This is a pretty important intellectual property for the people who are actually participating in the bids. There are actually information that may be disclosed as a part of the competitive bid, and there are situations in Romania that happen like that, where the information that was actually confidential and was about to be published in a bid was actually leaked to a competitor. These are type of things that actually have not necessarily direct monetary value attached to it, but they are actually a quite clear and present danger for many businesses to operate. If you don't mind, can you go just now to investments, because I don't want to bother people too much with the details. I would invite you to actually check the PwC.com site for the more details on this, because there's a quite a nice way to actually go through a number of different details. We don't have enough time here, but there's a lot of different information that you might actually quite useful. The survey name is called Global State of Information Security 2014-2015, and you can actually see it right there. And it's a public information, and it's accessible to everyone. We do this every year, and I believe there are some links even to the prior things. One of the things I wanted to point out here, which is actually leads to my next slide also, is about investments. And we cannot fool ourselves. It is very important to have a greatest equipment out there. It's very important for you to have actually good software and good management of the software as well. But also there is a third component that people are likely to forget, and this is what we talked about quite extensively, is a human factor. Nothing happens without humans. So this is another component. We had an unfortunate situation in this region that we actually just are coming out of the financial crisis. So I hope the security investments, the IT investments are going to rise, because it's for the benefit and for all of us and for the greater good. But this has also actually had a huge impact on the way how we battle the cybercrime in general, because we have the enemy that actually has a lot of resources, while most of the organizations do not necessarily or are actually very careful about assigning a high priority to IT security. Not that they are not aware of it, it's just there is not enough money that particular budget year. And this is the reality that many organizations deal with. I hope this is going to change, because we are getting more and more troubles in this area. There are more increasing phishing attempts every now and then. There are some statistics that you have been shown here about the botnet attacks and everything else. This is just going to increase. It's not going to slow down or anything like that. It's just going to be propagated to probably cosmic altitudes here. So if you don't mind, just go back to the actual presentation, which leads me to the next point, which is basically about cybersecurity investment. I guess the next one. So, and what we tried in PwC was try to actually organize the thoughts about a couple of these things. Because, let's face it, especially on the business side, and even some in the government side, actually kind of goes back to the money and how much actually you can actually finance the cybersecurity. So many organizations have to realize that you can't secure everything. It's just simply not possible. There are many applications, there are many different things out there, and there are many different factors that would influence your spending. So it's better to actually kind of figure it out what's the best to secure and what is the most critical from the risk point of view, right? It's for other elements, it's not about, for many organizations, they have to prepare for the cyber security incident. It's not a question whether it will happen, it's a question when it will happen. And in many cases, some of the organizations actually might not even know that it already happened. This is what we found out quite often on some of the clients. Goes basically to some simple kind of safeguards. The third point is actually organizations need to fix the basics. We don't need to reinvent a hot water here. There are some quite sophisticated cybersecurity problems out there, and this is true, and you're always going to be in a danger of that. But there are some kind of rudimentary basic things that actually need to be fixed, and this is what we discover on even routine audits. The systems are not patched, there are no upgrades available, antivirus doesn't work well, there is no enterprise solution, there are actually client-side solutions for antivirus, number of different things. Firewalls are not configured properly. Number of basic things that actually the industry and a technology component of any organization can fix pretty easily. There's another point, that there's a seize the advantage also focus. Compliance, unfortunately, and with all due respect, even with some of the initiatives here in Romania, and also generally in the world, is not on a high priority list for any other organizations. Maybe in US and to a certain extent UK, because they get penalized very quickly. We need to get to this conscious mode where actually the inability or unwillingness to actually kind of put some thought to it and some money to it will actually result in penalties for the organization and further fees. So this is the way that might, although this might be the way that right now the situation is, so the compliance is maybe secondary or tertiary priority, it might actually become a competitive edge in the future. So maybe many organizations should think about it if they want to actually kind of invest in this and kind of show it that we are safe to work with. Not a whole lot of organizations in this region still has that to the full extent. There are some good pioneers in this area, but there's more and more organizations that cooperate with others in businesses. So there's a more and more interaction on a technology level, interfaces, data flow flows from one client to another client. This is actually happening more and more and often. So you are exposed as your weakest link. So if they are exposed to a certain extent, you might be exposed as well. Not necessarily, and regardless of how secure you are on your own internal network, right? And the last bit is, of course, people matter, and it's the weakest link out there. I'll give you the example actually here from Romania. We had an exercise with one organization where we were actually agreed to actually perform certain things for them and to kind of test how secure they are, right? And there was a very good security awareness program in this organization. However, it was just enough for one person to actually answer or click on our phishing attempt, and we would actually be able to get in. This is how easy it gets. It's not just a matter of a big organization or a big client structure. It's just enough one person to actually be there. We also have to work on a training and cyber awareness on all levels. We had another situation where we actually attempted a very similar thing as well, and to our surprise, no communication was actually flowing to us, which was actually a very good situation, right? This means that people are aware that they're not supposed to be tempted by either emails or flash drives unattended or whatever. To our surprise, half an hour later on, after we tried out, the information started to flow. And what had actually happened, some of the guys who were actually being targeted for these type of attempts invited the information security officer to actually check it out. And the information security officer actually clicked on our link and actually enabled us to get in. So it's not just employees, it's everyone. Everyone can be hacked. It's not a bigger problem. And so I will kind of leave you with these thoughts just to kind of think about in your own organizations. It can happen to everyone. It has to be organized in a proper way. We have to have some support from the governance, either the banking authorities or the government or the National Security Council, whoever is actually feels responsible for this part. There's also very good directive, EU directive coming out, and hopefully will be passed sometime this December, which will actually reinforce this great idea that many of the people shared just before me about actually building individual industry aligned charts, which I believe, I don't know personally colleagues from Chartro, but I'm really happy that we have the organization like this. And they should actually cooperate with many more institutions outside as well. And this new EU directive actually will require for all the security incidents to be actually reported in a certain industry. So financial industry, telecoms are already doing something about this anyway. And other industries will follow. So this is a good, maybe a basis or foundation that this whole idea about setting up individual charts for industries might actually find a ground on it. And the last part, if you don't mind, just on the last slide, because I actually was aware that a lot of people are going to be from the technology component as well, so I will actually use this opportunity to be a little bit more practical as well. There is the newest threat out there is actually something called shell shock. It actually affects a few systems that are probably prone to that. I invite my colleagues from IT security, IT management, just to check what kind of a core information, what kind of a core network and routing infrastructure they have, whether they use Unix or Linux, because these are the two systems that are mostly vulnerable. There's a PwC cybersecurity blog that you can actually subscribe to, and then we'll alert you on similar things. This is actually a pretty important problem and vulnerability right now. It's very similar to a Heartbleed a few months ago. In most of the cases, it's still not fully patched, so just be aware of that and just be kind of concerned enough about it.